everyone. It is amazing to be traversing the stars again. Usually I'm hanging out in Words, Images, and Worlds, a podcast that I do. But so delighted on this episode to be jumping into this space again. And on this episode, I'm talking with composer, musical storyteller, audio storyteller, if I may say, Siddhartha Khosla. May I call you Siddhartha, Sid? What would you prefer?
Whatever works for you is fine. Siddhartha's great. If Sid's easier, that's good too. So,
Either way is fine. Well, thanks for joining this space, and you have added emotion and weight to some projects that I love, including Only Murders in the Building, Elsbeth. This is Us. This is Us was a wife watching it, me watching it with her, to be honest, but I did. It's hard not to get into it. And then, of course, the new show Paradise as well. So glad to be talking with you about these projects and anything else that you would like to throw in and explore?
no, that's it. That's great.
All right. Well, I typically ask an origins question first. So I'm curious
Yeah.
about what tapped you into the world of music and storytelling in film and some of those avenues of expression.
Well, yeah, I began my career as a songwriter in a band and singer-songwriter in a band called Gold Spot, and so I was sort of telling stories through songs. Stories about my life, personal experiences, and so a lot of my sort of early musical education, in a professional space came from sort of telling my own stories, and
Mhm.
and then and I also didn't know like if I never knew that this would be a career for me. Scoring television and film. I didn't. I always felt like maybe I'd be in a band, and perform in that band and make records, and that would be the sort of career. But you kind of need to be open to. I believe you need to be open to sort of like amenable to change, and letting your career sort of like take a different path sometimes, and that's okay. And that's exactly what happened here, where a good friend of mine, Dan Fogelman, with whom I went to college, he was writing screenplays and had written Cars and Crazy Stupid Love, and we'd never sort of crossed paths professionally, but we were always really good friends. And I went down the band route, and he was writing the screenplays, and eventually he
Mhm.
was just like, "Hey, can you come in and like score this TV show I'm working on, which is called The Neighbors on ABC." And they were looking for a composer for their second season, and I took the gig reluctantly because I just didn't know if like this is what I wanted to do or if I'd be even good at it, to be honest. And so, but that really was a huge moment for me professionally because it opened up a whole other avenue for me that I had not anticipated um, uh, traversing.
No,
Um,
yeah,
that's my origin story.
love it. What are some of the musical inspirations that you point to?
I mean, I grew up in India when I was a kid. My parents I'm first, I'm first generation born here. My parents are Indian immigrants, so I grew up listening to a lot of Hindi music, um,
Hmm.
and it's still some of my most favorite stuff to listen to. And I grew up singing old Hindi music, and so I have an affinity for, like like what my parents would grow up listening to is probably 60s, 70s Indian film music. And that's sort of like, it's very cool. Like some of it feels like Morricone-esque, but through a South Asian lens. And it's very, very cool stuff if you ever want to check out something that feels different and fresh. But so I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff and singing those. There were songs in these films. I grew up singing those songs, and so I sort of grew up with one foot in the East, and then when I came to the U.S. eventually, around the age of four maybe, um, I was born here, but then went back to India and then came back again. But then I grew up on the Beatles and REM and the Smiths and the Cure, and so I had a variety of like classic Beatles type of influence, but then also new wave type of influence with synths and like Depeche Mode and the Cure, and so. It was always, but the common thread among all the influences is melody. Like the Indian music had strong sense of melody. The bands that I grew up listening to and loving, the Beatles, the Smiths, the Cure. I mean, these are all very, very melodic bands with great melodies. And so that
Yeah.
sort of like I think that that the idea that melody was king was sort of has always been like the North Star for me in music.
Yeah. I love film history and the ways that film and storytelling in visual media come to be. And I know the French New Wave is, of course, a place that people point to as one of the fixtures, but Bollywood is such a fixture as well of
Totally.
storytelling and the way it integrates with music and dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great to hear that as an influence, along with the Beatles. Very, very cool combo. Uh, Now, you have a variety of emotions that you carry across in music, from something very weighty with family drama to something that's a little more quirky, like with Elsbeth. And then you have that like balance of comedy with a little thriller mystery and Only Murders, the triumphant sound of Paradise and some of the work that you've done there. So I'm curious about that approach that you take. Anything that you keep in mind when you're approaching a project?
I always like to read a script and see what it inspires before ever seeing any picture.
Hmm.
Um, because I just find that like you have no rules, at that point. You're sort of reading what you're reading literally what's coming off the page, and and I like to sort of let that inspire a direction musically, and then I present that direction to a director or producer that I'm working with. And so for me, there's always this, the approach is the same in that like I read the script, and inevitably I hear something, whether it's right or wrong, but like, for the project, but most of the time it feels like it's like close to being the thing. And also because producers, directors sometimes don't know what they want. And so like if I can come in with a clear sense of like what's inspiring me from their work, I think they appreciate that too. And so, there's just there's the artist in me that also like wants to create something fresh and new and original that's not like based off of some other temp somewhere else that's being thrown into the cut that I have to sort of then copy or not copy, what I'm saying, but like to like, emulate in some way. Um, I'm just not a fan of temp. And
Yeah.
so, and this way I'm able to, let's say I'm working with somebody that is a fan of temp. They can still temp their episode the way they want to temp it, but at least this gives me an opportunity to present something fresh early on.
Yeah. Well, thinking about like a character-centered story like Elsbeth, or a story that's really an ensemble like Only Murders in the Building, where you have those genre kind of pieces, are there specific ingredients there that you keep in mind?
Um, what do you mean by specific ingredients?
Like any element of the character that comes through in the script, or
Oh
specific
yeah.
feelings that you want the audience to carry.
Yeah, for sure. Like I think on Only Murders in the Building, the approach has always been, um for me, there are stories behind these people that are in the Arconia. So, Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez's characters, yeah, they have a podcast, and yeah, they're investigating murders that are happening in their building, but there's so much beneath the surface for each of those characters. They all have their own vulnerabilities, their own sense of loneliness, their own insecurities. Whether Oliver has been struggling his life to sort of have his musical career take off. There are like issues with Charles Hayden Savage and Lucy in that season one. There's all these things about the history of these people. Mabel also has a very sort of like conflicted sort of past, and it's like so the idea has always been like scored to the subtext of these stories, which has allowed us to sort of look at the music on Only Murders. On the surface, it's a comedy, but it's not. It's so much more. It's a drama. It's a mystery. It's emotional. It's heartbreaking at points, and it's deep. And I think that's been the fun part of it, is that I've never scored it like a comedy. I've always scored it like a drama. So in that sense, the sort of the deeper sort of the hidden demons or whatever else of these people is what comes out, I think, in the score, and the hidden sort of like secrets and their emotions come out in the score. For Paradise, it is a thriller, and also I have this sort of main theme in Paradise that I sort of come back to a lot. It's like the hero theme of the whole show, and the idea of that is that, and you see it in the first episode when Xavier is going on his run. You see it in the finale, you see it all over that first season, but there's like an emotional weight to, I think, that theme and that melody, and the idea is that we are in sort of this, we are in this like alternate sort of like world that this has been set in, whatever that is, and there's a desire to connect with the previous world from where they started and before they got here. And so this theme is all about the connection between these two worlds. And so again, it's scoring the sort of desire. Yes, it's a thriller, but there's also scoring to the desire of these people wanting to see the family that they left behind, to reconnect with the people that have been left behind. And so there is like a deeper sort of like, I don't know, there's maybe a mythic sort of quality to that approach. And Elsbeth, for me, it was like she reminded me of Dale Cooper from Twin Peaks, and just like odd, quirky, and great physical comedy and humor, in her performance, that I just wanted to make sure we stay out of and let her be funny.
Just saying that's a great comparison to Dale Cooper. That's really spot on. Well, curious about the sort of the process that you go through. You mentioned that you read the script. From there, do you do kind of a description of what you have in mind? Do you put a piece together for producers? How does that tend to flow?
I tend to have like my phone on some sort of like app, I have like a recording. I think I can just record something on, and I have that going normally, as I'm reading the script, and I'll sit at my piano and play along with it and stop. Or if I feel like, um, or sometimes I'll be on my computer and I'll be reading the script, and I'll have Pro Tools running in the background, and I'll just noodle along as I'm reading the script, and then I'll just have markers in place to be like, oh, that was kind of interesting, or you know, there's something special potentially here, and like I'll make markers. So like after I get through reading whatever it is, whatever, hour it takes me or plus hour plus that it takes me to read the script and stop and and write something or think about it, I have markers. And so I'm able to like go back to that original sort of feeling and response I had to something.
Yeah, yeah. Such a diverse range of titles, such a diverse range of genres. I'm curious if there are steps that you take personally to kind of get yourself in that emotional space.
Yeah, I'm working on an animation feature right now, called Puku for Skydance, and um, it's a very global sort of score, and there's definitely some influences from my childhood in India and all that in some of the score. And on that project, I took a very sort of like, there are more of a method sort of approach to writing the score. There's certain scales in Indian music called ragas, that are meant to be performed and heard at certain times of the day. Um, and remember I was trying to write this one theme for this very key relationship in the film, and I would get up at like 4:45 in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, go to my studio and see what came out of my brain at that time, what felt like early morning. Um, and I ended up writing sort of like one of my favorite themes I've ever written for these two characters. And it was just getting up super early, like time that I don't like getting up. Um, so, there's different ways you kind of keep yourself fresh and engaged and inspired. Um, I also like to not use the same instruments from score to score. And so I kind of force myself to either buy a new little toy or if I've got it, just use it and make sure I just don't use it again. It's the idea, that's always those are the two things I really try to do because, inevitably you sort of fall into the same trap of writing similar stuff. Like on This Is Us, I had an open tuned acoustic guitar and I've not used it since that series was over. It's away, and even I've not even changed the tuning of it back. It's still in the original open crazy tuning that I came up with for it. Um, I've not even used that guitar because I don't even want I have dead strings on that guitar that created this very woody tone, that I loved, this muted sort of dead sounding string tone. And so I just haven't touched it again. It's just sitting in its case. So I like to, find different sounds for things because sometimes a score can also be a feeling, and a sound is part of that feeling.
Mhm. Yeah, music is so powerful with memory, with emotion, um, and definitely telling that story. Is there a process that goes from season to season for you as far as deciding what to keep, what to change, or does that come back to the script level?
Once we go season to season, then I start like then I don't read the scripts as much, and I'm actually watching the picture because I have a sense of like, then I can then you're in efficiency mode at that point. By that point, I don't have the luxury of sort of like pre-writing and spending months like on oftentimes these shows I'm spending like lots of weeks and months sometimes. On Paradise, I spent 6 months trying to create the sound of this score before I ever saw a picture.
Mm-hmm.
And so but you don't have that luxury going into season two because like I have other projects happening, and so things just roll into each other. So for sake of efficiency, I'm looking at picture and then just writing to it and hopefully doing the right thing.
Yeah, yeah. I think I have one more official question as far
Yeah.
as the go-to places and things like that. But before we get there, I'm curious, as you think about the creative journey, as you think about maybe your creative journey or creativity in general, what is the go-to instrument that you would use to be the music for that experience?
My voice.
I love it. Nice, nice. And voice is a thing most rare and refined. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, great choice. Great choice. Well, that question, that final one is, where can people go to find out more about your work and listen to some of the music that you've created?
I think like all these soundtracks of the work are out on all the sort of usual places. And I'm not a crazy social media person, but I have stuff, on Instagram and, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, many thanks for the resonance that you brought. Many of the shows that we talked about are shows that I continue to watch each season and hope
Thank
to keep
you.
watching for some time. Absolutely. Did we miss anything in the interview that you want to make sure to share before we close out?
No, I think you were very thorough and asked some great questions, so I think we're good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. It was wonderful on my end as well. Great to talk with you, and certainly glad to chat with you again anytime.
Great to talk to you too. Take care, Jason. Okay.
You too.
Bye-bye.